Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Sunday special. Okay, that's as dramatic as I'm going to get today. That's an absolute lie. But welcome, as always, to the Sunday special, joined by the lovely Helen Chorley, the enigmatic Ross Harper, and the super sturdious Piotr Riznek. We will not have Mr. Lawrence with us today. He is managing an international issue that may result in World War III. So we're going to give him all of our thoughts and prayers in that matter and hope he resolves it in the best way possible. But we're going to kick off today with some comments about his Sunday supplement. So in the chat, who read it and what were your thoughts? I personally thought some of the comments around China, Russia, and some of the Southeast Asian countries wanting to join forces to create a new gold standard to usurp the dollar as an international staple. It seemed like a really interesting point to take on. I think about 3 months ago, I was driving back from the airport at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was listening to LBC because I was thinking there's no better way to lose your life than listening to that dross. So I thought I'd tone in, listen to it. And the clown that was speaking was the one that uses all the noise effects. And he had a professor who basically studies Chinese politics and Far East Asian stuff anyway. And he was saying, look, you have to realize how scary this is, how scary like reintroducing gold standard and usurping the dollar is. I mean, it's not great for us because obviously in the last 20 years, one of our brilliant chancellors sold off 80% of our reserves for the lowest gold price in almost 100 years. So
Thanks,
we're
Gordon.
winning. That's brilliant. But also, it's a really, really cool way I say it's a cool way. It's not great considering what's going on in those territories at the moment. It's a really cool way for those territories to try and get some autonomy away from the dollar, especially when it comes to selling their natural resources internationally, when it comes to raising funds and finance, and also when it comes to tracking of assets. So if you're in a UN or an EU embargo, the movement of gold is extremely very difficult to track, as opposed to dollar and pound and yen and whatever else. So Adam's thoughts on that were absolutely brilliant. He obviously gave a very serious goodbye to Liz Truss, saying how much of a gem she was, and let us leave it there for now. I think that's he did the best with his words possible. So yeah, that's my cliff notes of Adam would have done 80. We would be about 9:47 by now, but that's my extreme cliff notes for now. But I think a really good
well done. Jay's become Adam's puppet. Love it.
The problem is,
can you angle your camera down to make sure Adam's not behind you?
Thunderbirds a go over here. But it segues really very nicely into what's going on, really.
Yeah, and Adam really just kind of not looking just at what's happening, but what's going to happen given what is going on with US depleting its petroleum reserves and all the other things. So it's really kind of a look into the future rather than just kind of looking at current situation. And I guess given the challenges in the market and how many U-turns or pivots the government does, it might be a good opportunity to discuss what everyone else is doing in their businesses and their kind of ways of operating to address what's coming ahead.
Yeah, that's a good idea. One of the questions I was going to ask was, because I've been asked this probably half a dozen times over the last week, is where are you getting so I've been asked, where am I getting the information from which I base my decisions? And how often are you changing your strategy? As you know, I'm not terribly strategic with stuff because I'm not that into the detail of it all. But so my answer to that was, and I'll answer my own question first. Where am I getting my information from? I've stopped watching the news completely. I don't watch the news at all anymore.
Me too. Yeah.
And I don't take in any of even the kind of heavier shows you would sometimes watch on a Sunday because you felt that you were a bit closer to the political side. I don't do it. I don't read any newspapers at all. I spend no time on it. I don't take anything from it. And literally in the last 2 months now, Adam will kill me, and it's handy he's not here. But for the previous 2 years, I haven't really read his Sunday supplements. They're a bit deep and heavy for me. I know.
That's treasonous.
No, but I'm not clever enough to understand them, and I know that, so there's no point. But actually, to be fair, for the last probably 8 or 10 weeks, I have been reading them, and that's virtually the only bit of information I'm starting to take, because obviously Adam's involved in the same sectors. We've actually got some companies together, and I just was thinking, he's spending the time and effort. It takes him 3 minutes to do, I know that, but he's spending that 3 minutes and applying his big brain to it. And that's probably all the information I need. And all I'm doing is relying on the info from him, from Rod, from some of the other people online. And as long as it's written in quite small words, I'm thinking, I can understand this. I take the time to go through it.
Are you saying there's a market for someone taking Adam's thing and making a brief version of it? And
what would you call it? Was it the simple Sunday supplement or the Sunday supplement? But it's interesting because I do actually I'm now just pointing to people to say, when they say, what do you think? And most of what he thinks, when you think it through, makes a lot of sense. But even with that information, I watch him and Rod pontificate about what might happen here and what might happen there. But then Liz Truss does something really stupid 4 days later that nobody can plan for, and it all changes. One of my accountancy firms that I use back home, and the chap there, a guy called Donald, has got a huge brain, really, really clever guy, like Adam, thinks through and has it all. And what he was saying, he sent me a message saying, this is a real nightmare for us, because all these mini budgets, they have to release brand new brochures all over again with all the everything that's going on, and then the predictions of what happens. And then 2 weeks later, all that work that's done, which they might do once or twice a year, he's having to do it every 2 weeks at the moment. And I think he's just thinking, oh no, I'm going to have to do this again and again and again as we see our way through it. So speed of information seems to be able to change the future of what happens. If you look at what's happening with interest rates, I know it's not all to do that with that, but interest rates, exchange rates, everything's all changing all over the place, which can make a massive difference and tiny nuances can make big changes everywhere. But the reality of it is, if you're in property is a medium to long-term game. You can't keep changing every 2 weeks, can you?
Yeah.
And what are you guys, what are you listening to or looking at the moment, news-wise?
I'm the same as you. Like, I don't do newspapers, and I definitely don't do mainstream media. LinkedIn, I read a lot of stuff on, whether I agree with it or not, just because I'm on there. And actually, even Insta's less kind of informative, but you do get some gems and you get some alternative views, which again, whether you agree with them or not, are thought-provoking and kind of like open up your perspective. Well, okay, like what about that? So I find that useful.
Yeah, I do listen and sort of watch to some of the news things. Not too much, like I just watch it once and then I don't watch it on repeat all the time. So I don't watch like the BBC News all the time on repeat or something, like some people do. But I like to know what's going on or what kind of the media think is important for people to know. And at the same time, I do take a lot of I just read some alternative places, including Aaron's Instagram. He posts a lot of alternative things, and it's always good to see different perspectives or different possibilities of different things. But I agree with you, Loss. Like sometimes, for me, it's most important thing is to be able to apply something very simply, right? And so the kind of Sunday supplements or even the Rod's posts, they're quite elaborate. But I guess like someone like me is the most interested in what's the actionable thing that I'm taking out from it, and then that's all I need to remember from it, and then just move on, and I like to see what's happening, like with things that need immediate action. For example, when people come to sell in the auction, they need to transact within 3 weeks, right? 2-3 weeks, the transaction needs to happen. So at the same time, there has to be someone who's buying this in the next 2-3 weeks. So in order for the transaction to happen, we need to advise clients like where the reserve needs to be. And a lot of those clients right now are like, I want to be higher. I'm like, maybe a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, but right now it's not possible. So people need, like, they need to be way more cautious with the reserve prices, and we see a lot of auctioneers telling us the same thing, because they get bigger catalogs, but probably half of the properties are being withdrawn from those catalogs before the auctions. So things become much more difficult, and those actionable things are critical. Basically, that's the.
So to go back to what you were saying there, Piotr, so you are a bit like me when you're reading, for example, Adam's supplement. For quite a lot of the time, although I didn't read the whole supplement over the last 2 years, says him digging himself out a hole. But I did read the last 2 paragraphs, because Adam normally gives you the information condensed and then tells you what to do, which I quite like.
Yeah.
So maybe that's how we consumer information, that you want to find people, not only do they tell you what the problem is, but give you what the answer is as well.
And actually, it's, whilst I'm kind of not led by what other people do, when I speak to other investors and not just property investors, it's really interesting to see what they are doing and why they are doing it, because that's the same thing. They've taken in all their information from their sources, condensed it, made their decision, and then give me like the couple of paras on why they're doing what they're doing or position themselves that way. And I'm like, great, you've just leveraged all that information digest that they've done. So talking to people, is a huge source of information.
See then, just thinking for the greater good, you know how the guy gave the World Wide Web to everybody and all that kind of stuff? Why don't you do Helen's handy hints, and then you just share those 2 paragraphs with everybody else? You could be an internet sensation.
Yeah.
Like you this week. Whoa, what are we up to on your post, Ross?
I don't know, it was a before and after photo, but it went well.
Wow. I mean, like across platform, you've got to be at like close to 250,000 like impressions at least, right?
Yes. Very strange. Very strange.
Amazing.
I mean,
Have you had any trolls?
What's that?
Have you had any
You remember
trolls?
that guy that had an issue with Adam? What was his name? He had a Chelsea badge, and remember he called Adam something. I can't remember what he called Adam, and I don't want to get it wrong. Yeah, I can't remember, but he was on. He called out Adam for something and was slagging him off for something, and then everybody took offence at him. I can't remember, it was 6 months ago. But he basically came on and just basically pointed out that the post was either money grabbing or something, which is obviously not what the post was. So I just left it up there, and he posted it twice. So, but I get trolls. I get trolls normally, so there's nothing new for me. It's not. I think, as I said, most of my posts get 4 likes and a death threat, so it's to get other people. It's interesting.
But Adam is with us in spirit and in comments, and he's asking how often does an auction house try to get the price down once the property has been listed, thinking of all these withdrawals without even offering them.
So I can answer that as I own an auction house in terms of what we do every day. We will know from the minute it's listed, you can see how much interest it's got, you can see how many hits it's got, you can see how many downloads of legal packs it's got. And if within the first week it's not happening and we're not getting enough people to be interested and not getting enough people wanting these things, we will go back to the clients and say, look, this is what's happened, it's gone live. We're quite firm with our pricing. Most of our auction lots, unless they're in really good areas, are 25 or 30% discount to perceived value or to home report if it's in Scotland. And if it's the case that they're not getting interest, we will go back and say, look, you're not getting enough interest to sell this, you're not getting enough interest to get people through the door or download packs, so we have to do something about it. And then we have a weekly meeting within the office. So we normally handle 100 to 120 houses or properties or commercial units all within that figure at any one point in time. And we'll have a weekly meeting within the office where pretty much everybody's involved to talk about either how to get more interest or what needs to be done. And I think there was a girl from down under who was trying to sell some high-end houses in London, and I remember her. She really struggled. She borrowed money from lots of people to do them, and I think they were worth £5.5 million. She seemed to think per house, was that the right figure? But actually, in real world, they were worth 3 million. And she'd done them beautifully, and she'd borrowed, I might have the figures wrong. And then at the end of her post, she can't understand why they're not selling. They're amazing. They're in a great bit. It's this and that. And the last line of the post was, and please don't any of you smart Alex come on and tell me it's all about the price, because it's not about the price.
Well, interesting for that one, Ross, was that Piotr actually messaged that person afterwards saying, why don't you put it in auction with, was it zero reserve or something like that, Piotr? What did you tell her?
Yeah. So I said to her, like, when you put it without the reserve into an auction, so it will find itself, it's real true value in the auction, right? Because there'll be some people fighting over it, and it's gonna end up selling to the person who's willing to pay the most for it, and that's its market value.
Yeah.
The asset was in the right area. The product was good. The placement was poor. It was on a top floor, like 5th or 6th floor, something stupid like that. And it was in the center of a place where people who are living there are going to want an elevator to take them up 6 flights of stairs. And there wasn't an elevator.
Right.
So it was never going to get that price.
Yeah. So the reality of it was, for somebody who was purported to have a big brain, had done lots of stuff and was clever, the reality of, don't roll your eyes, Helen, the reality of that the final line was the only answer. The only thing that was wrong with it was price, because I didn't know about the elevator thing, but if you don't have a lift and you're trying to go up, I wouldn't want to go up 6 flights of stairs or down them to go back up them to get a pint of milk. I wouldn't, it just doesn't make any sense. But that was the actual problem. So my view, and it's always been my view since probably 93 when I started as an estate agent, you can't move a 3-bed semi out the street and transfer it into another street. Most people who are on the market don't have the wherewithal to be able to refurbish and redo things. So the house is the house. The person's situation is the person's situation. The only thing that can really change is the price. That's the only part of it in the agency and auction world. So we would always review the price.
I mean, there are some auction companies that, and there are some auction companies that will take on any property at any price, right? Because their preference is take control of the asset and the client, and then manage expectations down the line. So there are some auctioneers where you'll find they don't do price reductions. They'll let it go unsold, and then they'll relist into the next auction £20,000-50,000 less. And they'll keep doing that. This is more of an estate agency way of thinking. But the one I'm thinking of is backed by a massive estate agency. The way they do it is they just keep going down in price until it hits its price point. Right? There are other auctioneers that are very opposite to that. They'll start far lower. An entire street, for instance, with no reserve and just watch it fly or whatever. So there's many different ways to do it. There's a conditional method auctioneer at the moment that seems to be getting quite a bit of heat from the regulators for how they take a property. 2 weeks later, there's an auction. It fails to sell. 2 weeks later, it's back in. And they're getting complaints to I can't remember if it's the property ombudsman or the PRS. I can't remember which one it is. But they're getting quite a lot of complaints with how belligerent they're being with vendors and pricing. It's kind of like really aggressive. So it's kind of, you get from that extreme to like Ross's extreme, which is, this isn't working. We need to address the price. This is what will look reasonable. Let's see if there's a reaction that's positive that will get you the result that you're looking for. You get that. Then you get the middle ground, which is someone starting up here and then working their way down across the year till it sells. And then you get the really kind of aggressive, the price has to come down. This isn't going to sell. But, you get a whole mix of all of that. But how people act in this environment is going to be really very interesting. sellers, buyers. And that's before, that's the more interesting part. Before you even get to the agents and the auctioneers, for the most part, an agent and an auctioneer, if they're bad at what they do, they're just a window and a mouthpiece. That's all they are. They put the property details up and they can spew out what it says on the page. So if you're dealing with a poor agent or a poor auctioneer, you don't really have to expect a great deal. And in this
Do you not think
marketplace,
your guys, giving the auctioneers in particular, they should be more advisors though than just a window and a mouthpiece? They should be.
I think
giving
the good
advice
ones. Yeah, I think the good ones are. But yeah, I was making reference to just the bad ones, right? If you're poor or incompetent or just bad at what you're doing, or your sole motivation is fees
And
over.
now the problem is that anyone can become an auctioneer, because anyone can have this widget on the website and then list the property and have an online auction. So it became kind of easy to list something for the auction, but it's not easy to list something with a good auctioneer, or like just find the right way to auction the property. Because I don't think of
it. Yeah. And there's a knowledge base as well, because you can be an estate agent. I mean, you know this, Ross. You started off in a estate agency, you now run an auction company, a successful one, and there are very subtle processes, mindset, and positioning differences to being an agent to being an auctioneer.
I don't think they're subtle. I think they're gigantic.
There are some that are huge, like the reverse thinking on value and how to price something is probably the biggest difference, right? But there are other things which are far more closer to a normal process. I mean, I've been in agency and auctions. I don't own an auction company, but I've been in agents and auctions. And there are some things that were very easy to grasp. You go, okay, well, that's just a minor difference there. Just change that tone, or this is a different word, so you have to apply that to that meaning.
I think the biggest difference. I remember Chris Coleman Smith once told me he used to be the main person at Savills Auctions, and he told me once that like when they were sending someone for a viewing, they would ask the person not to say that there was a lot of interest, because if you say there's a lot of interest, people don't come to the auction. But if you say, "Oh, I'm not sure if it's gonna sell," everyone is like, "Okay, I'm bidding," and then the more people like that you get into an auction, the more of a fight there is. And agents are like, "Yeah, there's lots of interest, make an offer," and it's a completely different
that's actually brilliant, because when people used to go, "Oh, I've just gone to this viewing, there was like 100 people there," he goes, "I'm just not going to bother." I said, how many of those 100 people do you think are thinking exactly like you are? They're scared off, they're not going to turn up, they're just going to walk away from the opportunity. I bet 80% of them are just going to disappear. They're just going to forget it. This is a waste of time. They're going to move on. You need to be one of the 20% that's going to follow through.
Howard Sandy Hints. Interesting. I've got a great real world altruism from estate agents versus auctioneers. So I trained with what is Countrywide Group, Slater Hogg, as a trainee in the early 90s, and worked as an estate agent with Slater Hogg and Countrywide before starting to buy and sell houses. And I met my trainer, and it'll be about 10 or 12 years ago, and he's a wee bit older, and he's saying, "How are things going? I've heard things are going really well." So it was post-credit crunch when I'd lost everything. It was into the bit afterwards where you were reinventing yourself, and I'd got a bit of traction, started to get things going with this thing that was called auctions. And he said, "Oh, I heard things are going well." And he said, "Oh, I've heard some of your figures are amazing as well." So obviously estate agents knowing what's going on, and people know in the marketplace what's happening. I said, "Yeah, it's going great actually." And I said, "How are you getting on?" He went, "Yeah, great, really well." And then he worked in one of their bigger branches at the time, and he was doing about 1/10 of the figures that we were doing. But he's obviously, "Oh, we're doing this amount of money, we're doing this." I won't mention names or money. And he went, "Oh, we're doing this." And I said, "Oh, that's good." And he said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Probably last month we did 10 times that of half the number of staff." And he looked at me and he went, "Oh, that's good," over his pint. "Oh, that's good. But you are still selling shit, aren't you?" Direct quote. And I'm like, "So I've got half the number of staff, and we've done 10 times the figures, but your main issue here is because it's not big red sandstone, lovely houses in the middle of a nice area." It's a mindset thing. Lots of estate agents are trained, keep it away from auctions. Auctions are bad, when in fact it's just another process for sale. But we're obviously all quite indoctrinated into auctions now.
I think
That's
once
know
you
your
make a
niche,
move,
isn't it? Like you've nailed that niche.
Absolutely.
I think if you move from agency to auctions, there's no going back from there. Like there's just, if you're in sales, the auction sale process is so favourable to a salesperson that they're never going to go back to, offers that are exchanging or not getting to exchange or falling through or chain breaks and things like that. For aggravation level, it just drops down to like 3. And if you're a buyer or a seller, I think if you understand how to buy well and you understand which auction to put your property into to get the best result possible, it's unlikely you're going to use agency as a main route of exit. It's just unlikely.
Yeah.
It works so well, whether you're talking conditional or unconditional, depending on which company you're talking to, because there are some bad apples everywhere.
Or you go to a estate agent and you'll say, okay, send me this property, but when you take an offer from someone, take a 5K deposit. And if you don't have a deposit, the offer is not accepted. You keep marketing the property until exchange. You give them terms. But yeah, unlikely they will actually proceed with something like that because they won't know how to do it.
Although I would say Jay was talking about stress levels there and the stress of being an estate agent. I do remember a couple of Auction House London auctions trying to get a word in edgeways with Jay, who was operating the table at the back of the room, and it was like he was a market stall trader with 600 people. Like, and I'm like, hi Jay, do you want to buy something? No.
I know you left your checkbook at home that day, Ross. I know you.
Oh, brilliant. There's been some comments. Adam saying, I think that was regarding previous South Kent property. This is where your church has a lift, right?
Yeah, so people could get to the top floor. Yes, Adam.
Can I access the clean property? That often helps, doesn't it?
Dominic, your auction podcast with Charlie was superb. Jay Howard, I can confirm he's recovered now. What did you do to him, Jay?
I feel so sorry. Charlie's such a lovely guy. I feel so sorry for him. He goes, oh, this podcast, it's going to be about 30 minutes. It was like an hour and 45 by the time he could raise up the strength to push the stop button. I did rant on a little bit, in fairness, but no, it was brilliant. It was a great chat. It's always like when you do these podcasts, we really first started doing podcasts with Rod, right? We did like the auction thing. Those were really the first real set of podcasts that we did. And Rod's interviewing style is like very, very different to like Will Mallard's, because I think all of us have been on Will's run. Very, very different to what you haven't
never been asked.
Wow.
Literally never been asked, honestly.
# wake up Will. What's going on?
No. I think.
Oh, you don't want to do it?
No, I'd love to. I've been desperate for 2 years to do it, especially because Adam does 4 a day with him.
Well, that's good. My record with Will is 3 in one day. That was 3 recorded in one day. That was magical. He definitely had enough of me after that one as well.
I did a whole load. I was trying to catch up with the amount that Adam had done, and then Adam shut off, and I was like, okay, I admit defeat, and I've not done one for a while now. Charlie's just said good morning. Charlie, can you stick the link in the comments, please, to that so everybody can have a listen?
Yeah, I went on a bit of a rant. It was a good chat.
No, you?
Yeah, one or two rants.
I love a Jay rant.
Give us a bit of a flavour for the rant. What you're ranting about.
Well, I think Charlie's question was, what's the best way to buy a property at auction in terms of funds? And I said, cash. He said, well, what do you mean by cash? I mean, having the capital amount available to pay for the asset immediately. He said, well, that's not practical for a lot of people. I said, no, but auctions isn't practical for a lot of people. It's practical for a smaller group of people, and that smaller group of people can buy properties in that way. He said, well, what's the plan B? I said, well, the plan B could be that you put X amount in, and then you get some private investor finance, or you put X amount in and you get bridging finance. But you're not going to go to Barclays. They're not going to be able to give you 80% loan to value in the 28 days that you have. So my recommendation is, if you have the cash available, buy it, do whatever you need to do within 3 to 6 months, get it revalued or sold or whatever, and just move on, because your return on investment without all the cost of bridging or additional finance is huge. Does it impact on the deal? Well, if it impacts on the deal too much, then you shouldn't be doing that deal. And if it doesn't impact on the deal at all, then you know that you've created a lot of value margin to just crack on and go forward with that. I also use one of Piot's quotes, which has been attributed to me now, so I feel very, 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 very happy.
No. We need to reverse it. What was it?
Deals are made, not found at auction.
Well, that quote, I think Dominic
He
misquoted
it. Yeah, and I didn't correct him. I'm doing it now live. I've come good. I'm here live. I'm putting my heart. In fairness,
Okay.
in the
I require you to post it on every channel and minimum 100,000 impressions on each post.
I thought I was doing really well last week, because one of the posts that Noel asked me to do got like 10,000 impressions. I thought it's like the biggest post I've ever got. Then enters Ross Harper with 100,000. Completely blow me out of the water there.
I think we'll call Ross now the extra zero man.
Mr. 10x, he 10x
From 0 to 0.
Yeah, so a couple of rants like that, and then just it was a really good podcast, just talking about what we're doing, what we're looking at, and yeah, it was really good to catch up. I've probably been talking to Charlie on and off for about 18 months online, and then I went to the Property Investor Show and he had a stand, so it was the first time I met the man in real life. He's a good lad.
And did you wear a pink shirt to match for the podcast?
No.
Yeah.
I'm
Striped
pretty
shirt.
sure I wore exactly what I'm wearing now. I'm pretty sure. Just to show how varied and wide and variety my dress code is.
We have a comment apart from all the all the Panther comments. This is a more serious one. What do you guys think will happen next 12 months? Interest rates, and will this slow the residential market and increase in the investor market potentially? Do we think the deal opportunities will manifest more because of the interest rates?
I personally think any prediction you have, you can set on fire and put out by peeing on it within 2 weeks of saying that that's what you think is going to happen. Because I've never seen, I'm not that old, I've never seen the amount of tumultuous, either way. It's like everything, it's chaos. Everything's chaos.
Chaos.
A lot of chaos.
Yeah, every self-serving sack of shit that you can think of that has MP at the end of their name is going to do whatever they can to keep their name in history. Liz Truss did absolutely nothing apart from absolutely decimate the gilts, the bonds, the pound, the pension funds, and has just walked away with £115,000 a year for life. Yeah, enjoy, have fun. Now, if you're looking for passive investment, become Prime Minister. Fuck it up within 45 days and then just spend the rest of your life in the Bahamas. Look where Bozo just had to come back from, sunning it up in the crispy sun of the Caribbean. It's ridiculous. Look, I don't think interest rates are going to go quite as far as people have been predicting. I think they're going to try and combat inflation with increasing taxes, because that's really the only other move that they have. And I think Adam had mirrored that in his Sunday supplement as well. It's going to be a really difficult time, and the deals are going to be there for people who are positioned to do the deals. One of the things I've been following a lot of people who have large-ish property portfolios, like 100+ properties, large-ish. And over the last 18 months, you'll see the odd post from them, just the odd post here and there. I've just sold this one, and now I've brought down my LTV across the board to 47% LTV. Then 6 months later, they've sold another couple. It's now at 36% LTV. All of these, no money down, no money left in, stack the loan to value up as close to 100% as you can, let the income cover the back end of it. There are people that have been building property portfolios for 20 plus years who are doing the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And I don't see any other way that's going to operate. I mean, Ross started off the conversation pretty much with saying, though, that buying something at 60, 70 pence in a pound, if the property value turns 20%, but there's no longer a deal. But
so that was before we were online.
Yeah.
And that was part of the thing I think we wanted to kind of touch on today, exactly what you're talking about there, is what are we actually doing and what are we actually seeing?
Yeah.
And to go back to Adam, although it's not all about Adam because I know he's watching, but we will mention him again. The reality is, for the last 2 or 3 months, and I'm quite involved with lots and lots of properties with him through ownership, and Adam has been going round and working like a dog to try and get interest rates fixed for 5 years at as low a level as possible to minimise his exposure to rhubarb, risk. And his efforts and time and a lot of his focus, and I know he's got more time in every day than all of us put together, because that's how it seems to me from the internet. So much effort into doing this to try and create the right platform to keep going. For me, I've been going around trying to sell bigger assets, things that I perceive to be riskier. So I've got a couple of development sites that I put up for sale, one of which I worked for 5 years to get planning on, and was a real labour of love to get there, and had lots of hurdles to go over. But the reality of it, by the time it's completed in 2.5 years' time, I don't know what the market's going to be. And it might be amazing, it might be fantastic, and I might be cheering on the person that's built it and makes all the money from it. But the other side of it is, if the market comes back 20%, that's the profit wiped out off the site. The same with buying buy-to-lets. Just now, one of the big questions I get asked all the time is, what are you doing differently? And the main thing I'm doing differently just now is, I think I mentioned this last week, we're switching from purchasing buy-to-lets and hoping to refinance them out in 6 months to not purchasing them and only buying flips at the moment, because you can get in and out of a flip within a much shorter time scale. So albeit the market's not collapsed and shows no sign of collapsing in real terms across all the different channels, my theory on it is that will pick up after the new year and things will start to go. But we're already noticing, with all the refinances coming through for trying to get these portfolios onto bigger, onto lower rates now and fixed rates, we're noticing the refinances are coming in and the surveyors are being harsh. So the surveyors are taking cognizance of what's happening politically, economically, and that effect can only force things in one direction. I think in the nice areas and the real high quality areas and the really strong marketplaces, things will be fine. But I think we'll go back to that kind of two-tiered market structure.
Well, I find it really interesting at the moment, because people say, well, if the property values are going to go down, obviously there'll be more deals. Well, if property value goes down 10% and inflation is at 10%, although your cash, like you mentioned this last weekend, although if you have 100 grand and it's sitting in the bank and there's 10% inflation, you still have £100,000. It may only be worth as a pound, as the strength of it, 90,000. So you have the issue where the price goes down 10%, but the inflation has eaten away at the value of your capital. Then you have to add in the fact that the increased interest rates are eating away at the value of any income that you're creating, right? Which is why you're probably thinking all of those things combined, maybe a single buy-to-let isn't the easiest thing to be picking up, even if you have a 70 pence in a pound purchase price.
Absolutely. And the other thing I would say with that is, if we get to the end of next year and I've got my gas bill to pay and it's 100 grand, but I've got my 90 grand property now and I've used all my 100 grand up, I then can't afford to pay my gas bill.
Yeah, and I think also thinking about inflation in averages is not great, because inflation might be 10%, but it's not necessarily going to be 10% on property. Like on property, it might be minus 10%, right? But the actual property prices might go down. So your 100k will actually buy 90k, like 110k of property in a year's time, possibly. So it's about the timing of buying certain things. And yes, if you are using this 100k to live on and pay for the rent and pay for the things, then yes, that 100k why not pay all your bills and everything next year? But for this year, it could be sufficient. So it depends what you're using the money for, and what the time frame is also for the return on off investment and on investment.
The timing is a really interesting thing, and that's what you were talking about, Ross, like actually getting that money and churning it and returning it. And that's certainly what I've done in the stuff that I'm looking at. Like when we were recording the show in September, we got presented stuff. I'm like, you're asking me to make it, or some of them are asking me to make a view on something that's going to happen or be built into, and you're going to look to sell it in 2 years. I'm like, and as it happens, I'm like, I don't know where we are next week, let alone 2 years' time. So that stuff just is not appealing to me at all.
So, and I also think like there's like you were talking about this development, Ross, and I'm pretty sure like it might be that for you holding on to that risk of like not knowing what's going to happen in 2, 3, 4 years time is too much, but someone else might not be in the same position, and for them buying this off you is actually a good investment, and they don't mind holding it for 10 years waiting for the profit.
100%, and that can be shown by, I think there's 8 interested parties that's going to closing next week. It might or might not sell, but it looks pretty positive. The majority of them are either builders or housing associations, so there is a requirement for the properties, but it's that, what would you call it, opportunity risk for me, where I'm looking at it and thinking the money I'm putting into that, I'd be better buying, flipping and trading as I've done before on sub £100,000 properties with zero risk, because I know I can make 20% in each of those and do 5 or 6 a year, flip, trade, churn and return, that's a great term, and do that as opposed to being out all the money for 4 years or 3 years and hoping it comes back in. It just seems a bit riskier for me.
Yeah, that's right. And I like next week on Thursday and Friday we're running our auction workshop, and like normally the things in the workshop we teach, like they're pretty kind of like always the same, but I think the most important difference this week is going to be like we're going to be focusing more on people's situation, because a trade for everyone is not the same. It doesn't have the same kind of like opportunity cost and all the other costs. Like actually there was someone who commented on my post that I on my video from 5 years ago. So I had this YouTube channel called Auction News TV. It was awful, but I was sharing some. It was my very first videos that I did, and I was really bad in doing those things early stages. But like the guy commented on one of the case studies that I was sharing. And he actually, it was Alfie actually, you probably all know Alfie, but he commented on that property, and he checked what happened with it. And basically that lot, that was like 500k lot, mixed use commercial property bringing 25k, was turned into this enormous, massive property, like 12 flats, 2 commercial properties, gigantic. Like I would, like if I didn't see the after pictures, I would not believe this was possible. And it was like a 3.64 million pounds worth of property out of this 500k purchase in 5 years. And it was probably income generating. So it was a great deal, but it wasn't a great deal for everyone. And I remember at the time, it didn't sell in one auction. And then someone bought it post-auction and put it straight into another auction, and it sold for 100k more. So someone made the money in like that first month. And then someone held it for a few years, and then did all the planning and all the things, and then make money at the end. And there was different stages of that deal that were a deal for someone and not a deal for someone else. And I guess that's the.
Actually, you must be psychic. That's a chapter in my new book that I'm writing is about, is this appropriate for you? Sod what everyone else is doing, sod what the courses are telling you to do, and what's the flavor of the month. What's appropriate for you, and how do you decide what is appropriate for you with your risk appetite? So
how are you going to get a hand gesticulation so that how are you going to
She'll be translating it into British Sign Language, Ross, so you can just open it and see all the hand movements.
I'll have to do a video version.
So Helen, on the
Well,
point
lots
you
of
made earlier,
emojis, I thought.
that was clever. On the point you made earlier about the show, for example, does that mean that in the last 6 months, the people that are standing in front of you who have been brought onto the show and have come through a funnel process to get to those that come to speak to you on the screen, does that mean that the people that you've brought through the funnel process, is that actually some of the deals are really not going to work in your head because of the maybe the length of time then it starts to pan out over? And would all the judges be the same? Would they all be thinking that, wait a minute, it's a bit trickier to do this? Because some of the projects look really cool and some of the projects have got really cool numbers, and some of the projects have a wee bit of both, and some of the projects have none of the above. It's quite interesting. But does it then make it harder for the people that are standing at the front of the room?
I think it does at the moment, and certainly, we all have our different approach, and there is just different things for different people. And you can tell when somebody walks in and tells you what the deal is, whose cup of tea it is or isn't going to be. But actually, one thing we did all agree on, which is quite amazing, that we agreed on something, wow, is that the next 2 years is going to be kind of trickier. And I think all of our, I guess, tolerance, it's what you said as well, like the tolerance has to be bigger. There has to be kind of more juice that you're looking for, or another kind of alternative angle, or getting your money. And how I've been doing it is, can I put money in and get it out quick and still retain part of the deal? So then I'm like it's not risk free, but you know what I mean? It's like the capital is back and I'm still in the deal, and I've kind of got future income that's going to come in, but there's no capital at stake that can be redeployed again. So that's the way I've kind of started to change and structure things over the past year or so. But we were all a lot more, pessimistic and wanting more juice in it.
And so by juice in it, does that mean return to you?
Yes. Well, no, we were still
or more
quite
profit
fair.
in the deal.
Still quite fair, and there wasn't like, oh right, you get 30% and we'll take 70%. It wasn't kind of like that, which, considering some of the people involved, is quite amazing. But no, we wanted to like ask more questions around kind of the numbers that were involved, and just, I think the due diligence on this stuff is even more fine. Although I did do a deal, so that we're still investigating at the moment. So, but you can guess from that, it's not a 2-year development project.
So after all my leading questions leading up to this one, do you think some of the deals that have been done, and I'm being generic here and I'm not asking you to name names or people or anything, because obviously some of the people we know quite well and all that kind of stuff, but do you think then that jeopardizes some of the deals that have already been done in the room? As in, somebody 6 months or a year ago into a 2-year deal, does that make it harder then for them on the way process through the deal? And would the Dragon style people who are doing it, or the investors who are doing the deals, would they look to renegotiate? Or is it if you're in it?
I guess it depends how far in and how they've structured it legally. I mean, these are sharp, I said.
We had it sharp
people. So I would think that's entirely possible. It's not really my way of doing business. I think once you agree something, then you agree, unless there are kind of extraordinary kind of changes. And once it's all sewn up legally, then it's
and knowing you would go back and help the person redo the bits that you can try to help and to influence.
Exactly. Like my approach is, and I'm not saying this is right, it's just the way I do things. Like, you're in it, you're a team, right? Let's work this and sort this out together. It's not kind of one versus the other. It's not, I don't know, maybe I'm just a little less mercenary than other people. I don't know. Maybe because I came from a mercenary investment banking background and I've seen what that does to people and people's souls, and I don't want to go there.
Adam put a comment on Dragon's Dance. Tons of deals that are supposedly done on camera don't actually happen. I think it's I think it's a bit like with estate agents' offers, right? 1/3 falls through.
Yes.
I do notice quite a lot of adverts on social media now because that's what I consume my life with, or consumes my life. But I do notice lots of people who didn't get deals out of Dragon's Den. The adverts start with all 5 dragons wanted this, or if it's American, all 4 sharks wanted this. No, sharks wrong, wasn't it?
They call it Shark Tank, don't they?
Shark Tank
Yeah.
in the States, yeah.
Obviously, sharks are different over there, aren't they?
Yeah.
Lost in translation. There's obviously people who haven't got deals have gone on to be successful or at least launching the products.
But I mean, with
exactly.
the show,
no,
Helen,
there was one. Somebody did a post like that after, I think it was series 2 or the first one I was involved with. All the angels were fighting over me. I'm like, it's not really how I remember it, but okay, like, yeah, we're obviously living in alternate realities there, but knock yourself out. That's what helps.
So you refer to yourself as angels then, do you? All of you?
The show rehearsed to us as angels. I wouldn't dream of calling myself that.
Well, neither would you, don't worry.
I mean, if it was called Elevator in the States, they'd all be referred to as bellhops.
Bell something, yeah.
Bell something or other.
What, lift
It
shaft?
has a real ring to it.
Oh,
But Helen, if a deal was done maybe 6 months ago, let's say it was kind of like one of these like planning development style deals, you'd hope that within the last 6 months they would have gained planning, which would have increased the value of the deal overall. So if they thought maybe not building this out is great, they'd still have an increased value point to be able to exit onto, right? You'd hope.
Yeah.
I'm
Like I'm in
hopeful.
one that, God, actually since the beginning of lockdown, to be honest, that was still not through the program. Entirely off that. But yeah, we're rethinking like what to do about that with the planning, because the plan was always to build this thing out, but now it's like, actually, is that appropriate, and do we have any appetite? I think, I don't know, you can get a bit deal weary, can't you? What's the term for you've been dealing with something for so long and you're just like, I'm over this now, can we just like move on?
That sounds like something that's rooted into deeper commitment issues than just property, Helen. Yeah, I'm bored of this now.
Maybe that's why I'm single.
Okay, let's get the couch out,
Wow.
Helen. Let's do this live on live on Facebook.
this might go too far on my Facebook profile. Okay, let's move it somewhere else if there's a couch involved. Couch and camera. No.
So the shape of the show might actually change then, ultimately. Not that I'm picking on you, Helen, but the shape of the show might change, because obviously if the length of the deals, which is traditionally what people are involved in, now we're all saying maybe we're finding it hard to predict in 2 years, and there will be winners and losers, because old Ross would be buying stuff just now and has benefited from some of the stuff that he's bought, and old Ross has lost money in some of the stuff that he's bought, because I needed to do deals. I wanted to do deals. I wanted to make things happen. So the actual shape of what goes into the show might come back down to more in line with what Jay, Piot and I traditionally are specialised in, which is flipping things, trading things, getting in and getting out quickly, talking of property, and making things happen within a kind of finite timescale that you can measure and judge, where, okay, if the world collapses tomorrow in the property market, we will all be holding stuff that we don't necessarily need to. I've still got houses I bought in 2007, which I intended to hold for 6 months, and I still have them because the speed of collapse of the market or lack of funding in 2008 kind of crucified it. Some of them are not even back at the same value just now. So I'm just thinking that the real world application for that, for your shows, which is probably broadly speaking what lots of people were looking at, like Planning Gain, where they buy something, they add value to it, they then sell it on to a developer. There's less developers maybe looking. So the Planning Gain side of it, the GDV can still look great, but it's whether you can hit those figures is going to be the problem, isn't it?
I do think the shape of the show will change.
Good.
Yeah, I think
Maybe we could get Jay into that now as an auction specialist for getting them all out the deals.
Oh gosh, I mean, now you've got other people that have had their hands in auctions that would be far more appropriate on that show than I would be, and actually are on
You'd
that
be
show.
awesome.
Yeah, but
It'd be the most
yeah,
fun. We just have to use a lot of bleeps. Actually, I think I've done really well. I don't think I've maybe only sworn once.
I think if Jay joined that show, there would be too much saturation of Howards in the show.
the Howard
over
duplication issue.
Howarded.
Would one be each one and one be each two?
Can I
Like
be HB2? I want to like the pencil. I'll put hot bastard number 2. He can just be H.
Cool. Nice.
I mean, we've been trading quite a bit and flipping, and it's an interchangeable term for some, but we've been doing that for a while. But we're now looking at picking up an asset that we may hold for a little bit. So in terms of changes, because we don't hold anything. Like a lot of people that invest in, like yourself, Ross, who trade, you normally have a bedrock of like a foundation of assets behind you, right? That kind of that you augment with your trading income. We trade, and we do loads of other things.
We usually like 9 months is about right.
When we're talking about commitment issues, Helen, it's not just you. It's an issue for us. 9 months, like, it's giving me the end. Move it on.
It's not an issue. It's not an issue. It's a natural process. Giving birth. It takes 9 months. You can't change it.
The real estate gestation period for Piotr is 9 months. Yeah.
I think you need to set yourself up a social media group, the property commitments or something. And Jay could go on to non-PC.
Yeah, I'll be allowed a pre-watershed, right? But it's strange that we've been having this conversation about holding something.
Yeah, but you're going to hold it based on you're going to be able to add value somewhere else or do other things to it that create extra value.
It's a really solid looking asset, and it hasn't probably got the same amount of backup value adds that we would normally have on a deal. We'd normally be looking at 4 or 5. This has probably got like 2 or 3 solid and easy ways to kind of add value. Like one would just be looking at the income and just getting the rents up to current market value.
And I guess like this kind of asset, it's buying something in a fairly good area in London for less than the build cost. So it's never really a bad thing.
Yeah.
To hold something like that.
It works on breakup. It works on re-gearing the tenancies to current market value, and it may have 1 or 2 interesting plays on the land that's there potentially, maybe, possibly not.
Nice.
But the first 2 bits are enough for us to go, okay, well, the current yield is attractive. If we re-gear the ASTs, it would be even more attractive. You couldn't build it for the price that we're paying for it. All the things that you kind of want to hear, kind of like the big unit you guys bought, right? The bowling alley and the offices. Yes. You couldn't have built it for twice the pound per square foot that you paid for it. So, and on that metric, you kind of have to be happy to a certain degree.
And I need somewhere to stay in London, and hotels are really expensive.
So what happens in 5 years' time on that unit when the guy comes back that goes onto Piotr's timeline and sees that now it's got like a 40-story building on it? Is that one of these ones that it's got a beginning, middle, and an end, and you own a penthouse flat, Piotr, in the middle of London?
That's it. Note to Piotr: we'll take the before picture before we put the 40-story megalith on top of it. Yeah.
Will you remember to put a lift into that building?
No, just because it's you, we'll put in 2. Yeah. All right.
Not that big.
Nice one. Well, there's exciting times, and also we're running the workshop this week. So if we still have a few spaces if someone wants to join us on Thursday and Friday. And what else is exciting in your weeks ahead? Apart from next week's live stream at 9 a.m. on Sunday.
I think that's the only thing I've got in.
Are you back in Malta next week, Helen?
I'm in Malta now. Yeah,
Are you Malta
my
now?
mummy is out here with me. So, yes, I'm having a nice time with her.
Nice. So when is your book being launched, Helen? Just so we can keep track.
Well, I still have 10 more chapters to write, so not imminently, but next year, definitely.
Has it got a name?
Not yet, no.
So should we have a competition on here for
Ooh.
4 weeks to name Helen's book?
Yeah.
And then
when the
Jake
time is
could
right,
do his-
definitely.
Jake could do his fancy voice at the start of the show, and I was going to say release it, but that's not right. We'd launch it, we'd name it.
Oh yeah, when the time's right, definitely. Yeah, I need all the creator profiles out there. I'll need all your brain cells to.
Adam's going to start posting again right now with all his ideas, isn't he?
Oh, nice one. Okay, well, let's wrap up for this week. Unless there's something else need to be said before we wrap up. No? So thank you to Adam.
I've gone
Thank
off
you
on
for Adam
book
for
titles.
interactions.
I've gone off on book titles now. I'm thinking The Shark, The Banker, and the something. I don't know. Sorry.
Like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, right? One of those kind of things.
Shark and Banker. And
The
lots
Shark,
of-
the Banker, and the Billionaire. And that's you projecting.
Yes.
That could be
That's my
Thank
future
you.
husband.
chapter 10, exactly.
The banker, the Kiwi, and the Aussie all walk into a bar, and then you
Here
can
we
just do
go.
the whole book off the back of that.
The first suggestion, Shark Life.
Shark Life. Actually,
And you
the
could-
intro, I'm going to send it to you guys next week. The intro, I think you'll like the intro a lot.
Would there be shark on the cover? If it's not shark on the cover, like it'll be a big disappointment.
The intro includes some of what we were talking about today, which was really fun to write about 6 years on and a 6-month deal.
So is it 40,000 words for the intro, Helen? What's the word count so far?
I just couldn't stop, honestly. I was like, oh God, written like half the book and that's just the intro. Might need to go back and do some editing on that.
Cool, brilliant. Let's wrap up. Well, thank you everyone for comments, interactions. We'll be back next week, and if you have any topic suggestions for discussion, keep us posted. And I'm going to post a link to the workshop if you want to check it out, and we'll be back next week. See you all.
Have
See
a
you
great
later.
week, everyone.
Bye.